Well, good morning. I can tell you that a few minutes after the beginning of this so-called ceasefire, my contacts living in the capital was saying that they could see warplanes flying over the capital. It was already a breach of the agreement signed by the Rapid Support Forces and the military. And shortly after, they reported gunshots and explosions. And it was not a surprise for them. During the afternoon yesterday, I was speaking to many civilians on the phone, and they were saying that they had no big expectations regarding this new ceasefire, the seventh ceasefire since the beginning of the fighting on the 15th of April. They said that given the intensity of the fighting during the past hours, during the previous days, it was impossible to believe that the army and the Rapid Support Forces will stop fighting. During the previous hours, Rapid Support Forces members were still hiding in civilians' neighborhoods, looting houses, raping women, assaulting civilians. And in the meantime, the army was still flying over Khartoum and bombing these areas belonging to civilians. That's for the situation in the capital. But the fighting continued as well in the region of Darfur, the city of Niyala. As an example, during the past few days, clashes between the army and the Rapid Support Forces were in the city's center. Very intense fighting, according to my contacts on the ground. And in the city of El Janina, located in West Darfur, a few kilometers from the border with Chad, the Rapid Support Forces and local militias are still surrounding the city. Civilians are trapped inside and they are being targeted by the Rapid Support Forces. Hundreds of people were killed during the past week, according to local authorities. They cannot escape. So all these civilians are only waiting for one thing, a ceasefire that would be fully implemented.
Bastien, earlier this year, Sudan's military leaders and pro-democracy groups had vowed to begin working on a new civilian-led transitional government. That was before this conflict broke out. So how might this ongoing fighting then affect Sudan's already delayed democratic transition?
Well, to achieve its transition to democracy, Sudan needs peace. And with the fighting that broke on the 15th of April, the country made a gigantic step backward. So what needs to happen now? Well, a real ceasefire needs to be implemented for civilians to be able to join the negotiations. At the moment, the only negotiations happening are in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia between the military and the Rapid Support Forces, but there are no civilians involved. And I can tell you that in Sudan, the population wants these civilians to be involved in the talks. They say that the army and the Rapid Support Forces have been in power for the past 4 years. It's impossible to trust them anymore, so they want civilians to be part of these negotiations. Since 2019, General Burhan, the head of the army, and General Hemeti, the head of the Rapid Support Forces, were in charge of leading the country's transition to democracy. But since the beginning, it was clear that the military did not have any intention to give back the power to civilians, given that they are very powerful in Sudan. They are owning many banks, many institutions, many companies. They have no reason to give back the power to civilians. In 2021, after the coup, it was even clearer that both the General Burhan and General Hemeti wanted to remain in power. And that's what led to the tensions that we saw before the war broke on the 15th of April. They both wanted to be the one that would be leading the country. And now that the war broke, well, they know that their power struggle is a question of life or death. The one who will win this war will be able to remain in power. So, as they say, it's still too early to speak about peace. They both think that they can win the war. They are not in Jeddah to speak about peace. They are there to go to speak about a ceasefire, to speak about how to bring humanitarian assistance in Sudan. But it's still too early to speak about peace and to speak about the transition to democracy, unfortunately, for the Sudanese people.